March 4th, 2026. Hello, I am John Michael Chambers, and welcome back to Conversations of Consequence, where I feature the important voices of our times to weigh in on the incredible events that are unfolding before our very eyes in this global defense war as we fight to take back our country, restore our freedoms, and enter into the golden age. And joining us here today for an engaging conversation is my very special guest, Brad Wozny. Brad Wozny is the host of the Sovereign Soul Show. Many of you are aware of that, whose creed is love, levity, and liberty. Brad is a Reiki master for over 10 years, as well as twice optioned filmmaker in Hollywood before the pandemic hit. He served his country as a former Canadian infantry soldier and helitack wildfire fighter. We'll be talking about some of this in just a moment. In 2001, Brad narrowly missed being at the towers when the deep state dropped all three World Trade Center buildings. Brad's the only truther whom has stood at ground zero as rescue efforts weren't on. Then 72 hours later was flown up to the Pentagon, then went 18 stories below it, and again, we'll touch on that. Since launching his podcast with now nearing 700 episodes in 4 years, the Trudeau regime seized, emptied, and closed all of Brad's bank accounts after Mayorkas DHS communists barred Brad from returning to protect his family in the United States, as he refused to wear a mask is what triggered that. And that is a saga that is painfully still unfolding, and we'll discuss that with Brad. Brad today is a strong advocate of the death penalty for pedophiles and drug traffickers, assists as producer for Major General Paul Vallely, U.S. Army retired, at Stand Up America Foundation US. Brad regularly hosts his guests on his show and discusses all things ancient, current, and quantum. Brad has been a panel member in the Global Defense War military panel that I launched and host in our second year now. And we're real happy that Brad frequents that panel with the other military experts. And very important, we're going to learn a little bit more about Brad and his journey. Welcome to Conversations of Consequence, Brad Wozny.
John, welcome, and great to be back here with everybody. I'm ready for the interrogation.
Yeah, yes, get in the seat. Patrick Burns said when I did Conversations with Patrick, after the first few questions, he says, I feel like I'm in the seat talking to Freud or something. It's not that bad. But truth is, you've had quite the journey, and you are an important voice in our times. I'm used to seeing you in a 5-panel box at the Global Defense War, but right now it's just you and I. So let's have a conversation. Before we get into your analysis, and this is to our audience, Brad is going to weigh in on a couple of the critical issues that we're facing today and some forward statements as well. But before we get into your analysis of these things, Brad, I'd like to delve into just a bit into you and your journey. Go where you choose. Wherever you want to share with the world is up to you, of course. But where were you born and raised, and what was life like for little Brad growing up as a child?
Wild. Well, first of all, I hope the audience really appreciates what you do for the world, John. And at a point in time, you're going to be coming onto my show, and people will get to unpack the incredible heroism, and I call it heroism. You know, civilians stand up and you see something where you pledged your life, your fortune, your sacred honor, which is part of that incredible precedent which signed the Declaration of Independence. You know, the families, not just the men who did that, but the families, the children that were lost, the home was burned and whatnot. And you are an example to me, as far as I'm concerned. Your story, it is an example that needs to be exemplified for people today. And the fact that you guys are doing what you're doing, numbers not disclosed, with the incredible guests you continue to have on, and like Patrick Byrne you mentioned, and so many others, that to me just proves the fact and the point that we are the media now, as Q said. And you literally, if anybody doesn't know, John Michael Chambers' show here has surpassed the combined total viewers of CNN, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, and others all together. He's crushing them right now. And that also speaks to the fact that you're doing it on Rumble. You have an incredible team behind you. And it's an honor to be here. So I hope your audience acknowledges that and they see to it. And thank you once again for being here. So me, growing up, man born on the land in what they call Mississauga, Ontario. China is what you call it now, or Guela, but also America, as we know, from a sovereignty standpoint. And a couple of things that I might say here for your audience who they might not be aware of is Article 11 of the first American Constitution states November 15, 1777, the colony of Canada is acceded into this Republic of America. And from a historical standpoint, we know that Canada was hijacked. Actually, Canada was a very small, we knew Upper Canada, Lower Canada, and there was a revolution for many Americans and patriots of the MAGA movement as well are mostly not aware when we talk about this, that the 2nd Canadian Regiment, 2 RCR, but it wasn't Royal, it was a 2CR, 2nd Canadian Regiment, was actually part of George Washington's Continental Army. And a friend of mine, a name people will know, Norman Traversy, National Firefighter Hero of the Year, voted by his peers, 1999, Mississauga, Ontario, as a matter of fact, and a convoy legend, a Freedom Convoy legend who ran Ottawa for the Canadian Freedom Convoy. Norman is the the descendant of 2 Traversys who both were personal messengers for George Washington in the 2nd Canadian Regiment. One was KIA by the British. The other, Captain Joseph Traversy, was there when George Washington disbanded the Continental Army at West Point, New York, which then are those sacred grounds where the United States Military Academy was established. So where we're looking at President Trump bringing back MAGA, One America, and the jokes that have gone back and forth for over a year, Governor Trudeau, Gretzky, you should be governor, greatest of all time, et cetera, 51st state, Greenland. Just so everybody recognizes the eminence of the fact that all of the Americas, the Western Hemisphere corollary of the Donroe Doctrine, is to be under an American flag. And we've already seen them 3 years ago and 2 years ago, including when President Trump was giving his speech at the Fraternal Order of Police, 2024. I almost said a year ago, 2 years ago now, right? 2024, they had 77 stars on the Spangled Banner, and they continued to put that out there. So those 77 represent states or territories of the Union. We know it's been done in the background. Unfortunately, some of us, myself included, are still living through the subjected times until it becomes a more public reality to that fact. So when I state that I was born on the land in Canada, which is also America, that's where it was. And I grew up for the most part in Ontario, went to high school there and went to university there. And that's obviously going to the Canadian infantry. And I was in an incredible militia unit. And then also as a firefighter, a helitack firefighter, fire ranger. We're jumping out of helicopters, putting out fires in Northern Ontario and the Yukon. That was the best job of my life. I loved it.
Wow. So I'm going to take you back a little bit further just for a brief statement, then we're going to move into those issues and more. Obviously, Canada has changed. And thank you for stating, let me go backwards. Thank you for stating all that. I just learned a ton. I'm sure our audience did too. And now it makes a lot of sense to those that Trump just didn't pluck out of thin air. Hey, Canada, come on in and blah, blah, blah. It's already in, and we're just trying to set it straight. But you got some obstacles running your country, that country at this time, or we'll call it Canada. But obviously the country has changed dramatically. How was it as a child? Was it a fun place to be? Did you have a sense of freedom? Were you into sports, hiking, outdoor activities, music? What kind of things were you doing?
Yeah, all of the above. I mean, completely unaware to the fact that Canada is a crown corporation registered July 1, 1867 in Washington, D.C. A corporation, right? Which then is part of the USA Corporation registered 1871 goes to the City of London. I had no idea. My parents had no idea. My parents, by the way, amazing for them. My dad was born on the farm in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. He was the first generation born in what's considered Canada. His parents fled the Nazi blitzkrieg in Poland and Ukraine. His father, Polish at that time, his mother, my grandmother, Ukraine. I remember growing up, my granny Wozny used to say that back in those days, the borders, so in the 1910s, 20s, 30s, the borders, she said, could change every month or every year. So So you're either in Ukraine, then you're in Poland and whatnot. But they're all farmers. And to put it into perspective for them too, and my mother's parents from France, they all had the same thing. And my mother's father, grandfather, when he came over with my mom's mom, his wife, and my Nana White from France, the same thing, the same story. But he signed up with his two brothers to go fight the Nazis, and he flew B-17 Lancasters the entire 5 years of the war because Canada declared war on Nazi Germany. Again, we're putting all this in quotations here because we're giving a lot of hidden history that's been revealed to you and I, John, and our audience, is 1939, 9/11. So on September 11, 1939, the Crown Corporation of Canada declared war on Nazi Germany. 9/11, where are we seeing that again? And we just saw it again with Ramadan and what President Trump and Operation Epic Fury and those patriots just did. So that 9/11 keeps coming up, and you also mentioned that in my bio. I find that pretty intriguing. But growing up, mom and dad were extremely poor. Unfortunately, my grandfather was not a good man, turned out to be. My mom was SRA'd, Lynn Scott Hagerman, Kathy O'Brien. She's almost exactly like that. She will, to my knowledge, wasn't farmed out to politicians. But we learned about this when I was in grade 8, and she volunteered to get checked into a hospital because she woke up screaming one day. And then all of a sudden, over the course of the next part of my high school years, it was unpacking while she was seeing psychologists and in and out of hospitals. Raped her sisters, my grandmother, and we had all of that stuff. But that was later in the years of my life. But I remember distinctly my father and my mother telling us as kids, and they always said, I love you, despite whatever was going on in the business. And they built themselves up with high school educations. Mom and dad never graduated high school. And they built up and had lumber mills in Ontario, right? We'd have a lumber mill at a time, and the economy was good. Economy is good. Life is good. And then the economy crashes, lose the lumber mill, lose the house. What do we do? And they would go out and build all over again. I witnessed them do that twice as a child growing up. But they would always make sure there was love in the house, despite that there might be some extreme things going on behind closed doors. And with that said, yeah, sports. I was in gymnastics. I couldn't stand baseball. I found that boring. I was in hockey for a number of years. Swim team, ski team, you name it. But I really excelled more or less at things that I did on my own, very creative as well. I did a couple of things in the film industry, modeling industry as a kid, and I was always working. I had paper routes since grade 3. So,
wow, well, fantastic, incredible journey, and that you and your family went through. And so, thank you for sharing that with us. Let's advance a little bit. I'm very curious. What age were you, and what inspired you to join the armed forces? Share with us what it was. Was there some highlight, some particular event, some person, some inspiration? What took this young man and said, I want to jump out of helicopters and put out fires for the military? How old are you, and what inspired that?
well, first off, I would love to meet Lieutenant Colonel Matt Meck because he actually has flown jets. I think it was A6 Intruders in Gulf One. What an amazing man. But I was inspired by Top Gun. Our piano teacher snuck us out to movies. What was that, like 1984, 1982, and that came out? And I literally remember on the edge of my seat as a kid staring at that film going, I want to do that. How do I do that? From that very moment on, it split me in two directions. And it's incredible when we have these things in our life, right? How do I become a fighter pilot and do that in Canada? Or how do I go and make movies and be able to do that in a movie? And I was enthralled. And I ran through 2 VCR tapes of Top Gun. By the time I think it was like grade 5, I'd watched it 54 times. 54.
Wow.
And my parents were like, no more Top Gun, right? You continue to go out and play. So that informed things. And from that, I looked at Air Cadets and Royal Canadian Air Cadets. I had to wait till I was 12 years old. I wasn't there yet. But when I turned 12, I was immediately in Royal Canadian Air Cadets and uniform and dressed up in shoes and salute and all that kind of stuff. Learned the phonetic alphabet. And then also I found a ad in the back. I think I was delivering then the Brampton Guardian. And people in Ontario would know Brampton back then. It was a suburb separated by farm fields from Toronto, but now it's part of the Greater Toronto Area. And in the back of the ad, it said, learn how to get into television as a kid. And it was like $950. I remember that, $950. So I had to present a business plan to my parents. This is grade 4. And
Wow.
I wrote it out on a page. And I said, if you give me the money, and we do this for 12 weeks and I could learn how to do this, I'll pay it with my paper route. And then if I get hired on anything, right, you get in a TV show or something or an extra, I'll start paying you. So we actually that was the first contract I ever had. So my mom and dad fronted
Wow.
me the $950, shy of some of my paper route money, which is maybe 10 or 12 or $20 back then. And yeah, that kicked it off. So I did that and got a talent agent and did some modeling and did some like acting extra stuff, behind the scenes, not behind the scenes work, on set work, but background acting, waiting for the moment that would either break or I could get in and be a pilot. And that took me all the way up to my last year of high school, both of those dreams, which all got shut down.
Well, that's quite. You took on quite a lot for a young guy in fourth and fifth grade. So that's pretty extraordinary. When did you join the armed forces? How old were you? And was there something that in your life that said, "This is what I want to do right now"? Like, what was it? What was the
Yep.
motivation, and what was your age?
John, the precipitating factor to that, in high school, my Aunt Pat had said, you always have to have a backup. So where we were going, living at that time, a place called Wasaga Beach, Ontario, I was going to high school in Collingwood, Ontario, which many Canadians know, Vail Resorts, or, Whistler Blackcomb now owns Little Blue Mountain ski resort, where I used to take a snowmobile to high school sometimes, my snowboard or my skis on the back of the sled, and then go and get all like 310 vertical feet in. But the Royal Military College in Kingston, Ontario was the path to become a fighter pilot in Canada. You'd have to do a 4-year engineering degree, mechanical engineering, and then you still have to go through selection to become a fighter pilot. So I went with that direction. Have to do calculus. You have to get, I think there's percentiles were a little different in Canada. Instead of the A's and the B's and the C, or the 4.0 rather, system that you have in the States,
Mhm.
we had like 100%. And what they required was you had to have 105% on average. The recruiters were kept telling us, right? So I'm in Air Cadets. You're doing this, and they 105%. How does that happen? It has to be on the studies. It has to be on any volunteer work and any extracurricular activities. So athletics, I was doing all of that. Summer, fall wasn't all that great at certain things, but I was still crushing a few of them, like swimming and skiing. And then other ones, volunteer work. And then I was, like I said, I've never stopped working since grade 3 paper route. I never went a day, or a week rather, is more like it, that I wasn't working at something, right? And trading time for money, so to speak. And so I always had 2 to 3 jobs in high school, and I had to attain it. Now, calculus was kicking my ass by around grade 10 or 11, and I had tutors. But how I got to that, to answer your question, is when I was in Air Cadets, we're at Canadian Forces Base Trenton, Canadian Forces Base Borden. You're meeting pilots who are in helicopter squadrons, 424 rescue squadrons, C-130 Hercs, combat SARTECs, technicians, like very similar to JTAC that you have in the United States Air Force. I had one on my solo speak, an amazing guy. Dominic Luke is his name. And they would sit there, and most of them were wearing glasses. And I went to the recruiter in Toronto with all my qualifications, and that was the first shoot down of the dream, of those 2 dreams. And he said, you have to have 2020 in your application. And whether I've been told this before and I purposely ignored it, the thought went by, or I was never told it, I was devastated, and I tried to appeal to him, and he said, no, all those pilots will come in with 2020, but if their vision degrades, and I meant F-18 pilots, Royal Canadian Air Force F-18 pilots, right? I'm talking about what's the life like, wanting to be there at this dream since I was in that movie theater. And he said, you can't do it. And laser surgery wasn't allowed in the 90s, Canadian forces, for that type of a position. So therefore, you're done. So that's dream crush number one. And that same month, my parents declared bankruptcy in the business, and I had a chance to get a half a scholarship to NYU Film School with everything that I had going on, because I was also doing film projects on the side, video documentaries, and I actually, since grade 11, would take almost every one of my subjects, geography, English, history, and I had a VCR, the Sony High 8 camera, with the little, High 8 VCR tapes, and then you take a regular VCR tape and put it in the deck. I actually would turn all of my essays into videographies back then. And I had no idea. I just loved it. And I had my buddies that would come in and play Julius Caesar, or we'd do Bob and Doug McKenzie back and forth that are, doing the history of Canada or the United Nations, right? And I would put a combat uniform on with my beret at that point in time, and walk in and do these presentations and these videos that I was doing shuttle decks. If anybody knows, back in the 90s, you're spinning this, spinning that, you got the tapes around you, and mixing music in my free time. And so mom and dad couldn't come up with the nearly 40 grand US NYU Film School would require if I went through with that full application, because we were just declaring bankruptcy. So that's when I was faced with a decision on what to do. I had marks. I had both dreams shot down in roughly less than 5 weeks of each other. That's probably the first taste of real depression that I ever had. And here I am at 18 years old going, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, for the rest of your life. You're in grade 12. You're planning one of these two. You can qualify. You can go out and get it. And this is what happened. And on top of that, we had this stuff going on with the family back at home front. And as a result of that, and that was because of business, lumber business. If the economy is doing great, people are buying lumber, they're building homes in the United States. All of our lumber exports were down from Ontario into the Michigan marketplace, down to Florida and Alabama and Atlanta, you name it. And all of a sudden, when George Bush won, and I've got a lot of problems, Bush won from my family side, just because of these ones, outside of all the other stuff we know about him now.
Oh yeah.
That was it.
We all have a
he
problem
cut off
with
all
him.
the imports. Yep, cut off all the imports, and that was it. And you can't do anything, right? So we're facing that. And as a result of it, that was it. I'm like, well, okay, how do I serve? What can I do that would still be fun? What can I at least set some type of sight on my goal? Because I don't now. Like my dreams are gone. My idea for my life is gone. 100% vaporized in 5 weeks. So I signed up at a Canadian Armed Forces recruiter station, 18, and got on the next cycle to get into infantry battle school training. And then I'm sitting there like, what do I do with my marks? Obviously, I couldn't stand math, but I was extremely good at it. Even though calculus was kind of kicking my ass, I had a tutor, I could still pull it off. And I had everything else. And I had what would consider to be 105, 110 percentile, for a recruitment standpoint at the military college. And they're like, I could go for that. But I'm like, I don't want to be a mechanical engineer. I want to fly. I want to do something very adventurous. And, I told you, like, there were times I took snowmobiles to high school, and I joke with some, my friends know this joke from back in the day. I like to joke. This didn't happen, but I like to joke that I was conceived on the back of a snowmobile. And when I met my previous wife, I've only been married once. She's Canadian Alpine Ski Team junior world champion. And she went, snowmobiling's your number one sport? Snowmobiling's not a sport. And I'm like, all right, we're going on a date. I'm going to show you how much you can sweat and get going. And she agreed after that. So, but anyway, I waxed on, and that's kind of what set me off on that course. I looked at Wilfrid Laurier University, which is considered the School of Business and Economics, which is considered literally was titled, by recruiters, the Harvard Business School of the North in Canada. It was ranked number one consistently. Of course, there's one other would go, maybe we're number one this year versus that. But that was kind of a known thing. And my dad said, son, go learn business. So here it is for my two parents that have been very successful in business with no high school education, but they just had the chutzpah and the work ethic from their background, their parents. Not to say a lot of great things happened to my folks growing up, but they've got some incredible chutzpah, right? And here we are. And he said, go do this business. And my high school recruiter said, you should do economics. And I'm like, what is economics? And I was taking an economics course in high school. And she just said, you're better to get into this program. It's a harder program. I didn't know. And I just followed it. And I applied to 3 schools for that. And Wilfrid Laurier accepted me. And I went there for honors business economics.
Wow. Incredible journey and very diverse. And that leads us to films. To my producer, put up the image of the 3 films. As I understand, Brad, your 3 films garnished 9 Hollywood nominations for screenplay. Talk with us briefly about each one of these that we see up here on the screen. And are there any current films that you're working on right now, is part 2 of the question.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, John. So 2 of those that you see there were optioned. You talk about dreams, right? Got a chance in 2015. I had quite a life event. The lovely girl I was married to, we lived for a long time in Colorado, the Vail Valley as well.
Mm.
We went through separation, right? We got divorced in 2015. So in a 3-month period of time, after a year of marriage counseling, she said, I'm done. It's over. Right. And so that shattered me, because this was my girl. This is who I was going to have kids with, 12 and a half years relationship. Wow. What do I do? And 3 months later, I got run over on my motorcycle. The driver in an SUV went straight through a stop sign as I was on my trip to Alaska. Now you're like, well, and I'm a big motorcycle adventure rider on 3 continents. You camp off the bike, and an adventure means you can go on the street and you can go over the mountains, through the streams, right? And through the snow. So I had a big BMW 1200 GS adventure bike. Like everybody knows, Ewan McGregor, they did that long way around, all that stuff. And that was kind of me. And so I went, you know what, I've always wanted to do the Alaska trip. Haley, I won't say her last name, my now soon to be ex-wife, she didn't want me to go out for more than 1 week. So this will be a 6-week trip. So I got up to British Columbia. Everything's great. I leave my army buddy, the guy who, we were in the same regiment. We went to the same school together. We've known each other since we were 19. Left his house that morning. See you guys later. I should be in Anchorage in 2 days. And as I'm riding down the street, side street, get smoked. And I went up on the windshield. She went up over the motorcycle. My ankle was pinched, slammed on the back, cartwheeled across 3 lanes, slammed into a fire hydrant. And just 12 days earlier, I had bought an airbag vest for the motorcycle trip. And I had picked up a new bike, new BMW 1200 GS, all outfitted with the guys ready in Denver, BMW Denver. And they're like, you're going to Alaska. You should try this airbag vest. And sometimes your soul gives you those moments. It whispers to you, John, and it just kind of puts these things that you're not ready for. And you're like, no. And they did a demo, and I'm like, well, I guess I should do that. Put the money down. And I always wore that airbag vest, and that's what saved my life. But my entire right side of my body, LCLs, ACLs, MCLs, my labrum shoulder torn 90%, 94%, 70%. Not a bone broken, because I wore all the gear. And I ended up a Tiger Woods surgeon. And Tiger Woods surgeon, this guy in Vail Summit Orthopedics, Vail, Colorado, because I was still living there, even though now I'm going through separation, right, divorce. And I had to get flown back there for insurance and get checked out. And he rebuilt Tiger Woods back. He's still the same guy who rebuilds Lindsey Vohn's knees. Everybody knows Lindsey. And he's like, Brad, you're going to need 3 to 4 surgeries. It'll take you about 3 to 4 years. You might get 70% recovery. And I'm going between wheelchair and crutches here, because I don't have a PCL ligament in my right leg. It snapped. And they said I had to get that fully replaced, right? So some crazy stuff going on. So again, the divine intervention just shows up in the right time. This thing shows up and says, Masterclass, Aaron Sorkin, creator of The West Wing, writer of A Few Good Men. I'm like, what is a masterclass, right? Now I'm extremely crusty because I'm going through divorce. I've seen and tasted death, and I'm being told this: you might get 70% of your body back if you're lucky, and you start the first surgery immediately. And by the way, I got all marked up for that surgery and it never happened. I've never had it. And I actually am more physically fit now, 11 years
Wow.
later from that, far more fit now, doing things that I still couldn't do back then because I had never pushed myself. And I healed myself naturally. The only injection I ever took was a cortisone shot in my shoulder. All the rest of it was Advil. And that's still not good for you too. But compared to Oxycontin, it's a much better choice. And so I started there, John. And that's what happened. And a long way about for the audience to come to two of those scripts finally. You never know where things go to. Got to a production company at one of the major studios. And in December of 2019, I'm sitting there and I sign off and option one of those films to that production company. And in February of 2020, just a matter of weeks later, they optioned my second one of those films. So here I am, February 2020, going, holy cow. I've never went to a film school. Yet here I am with not one, but two movies optioned on the lot at a major Hollywood studio. And now they're working and we can go take it out, right? And then I'm also developing TV series, and I've got TV series and pitches for that going on. And then in March 14, 2020, I'm in Santa Monica, California for the meetings that were to continue happening over on the lot at the studio. And then we got Gavin Newsom coming out, or whoever the governor was, right? And then here we are, and life changes again. So I
Yes.
think what's important for people to take from this maybe is you've heard my two dream shot down stories. You've heard a little bit about my folks and what I grew up with. And you've also heard about this story. But there is a divine providence and there seems to be a divine timing to reset us in things where we have a collective agreement from our soul's level in this our incarnation to get to a certain level of skill sets that may, whether you believe in God, I believe in God, the omnipresence of divinity, the creator source, right? Big capital God, right across the board, that we're going to get you that skill set here, but then you're going to go over here because of what's required in your life path that you agreed to, because we're not going to show you about this incredible war that's coming and going to be waged upon the world, but your skill sets are going to be necessary for whatever you're going to do if you're going to walk that path, right? And we need to kind of get you back onto this path, Brad. So this is where I believe it, and I think when we're all done here, maybe in a year or two, John, to a degree, that'll be able to get back onto the TV and the film track.
Well, incredible journey from being very athletic to a warrior to filmmaking, and I'm real happy to hear that you've recovered. You're bigger, better, and stronger than you were back then. That's miraculous, and that's great news. As I read into your bio, as I read actually in your bio in the introduction moments ago, you're a trained Reiki master, Reiki master. I don't know how to pronounce that word, Reiki.
Right.
And for over 10 years, what led you to this? You've had an interesting journey. Talk with us about this aspect of the journey. What led you to this area of study and practice? And also, for my edification and our audience, define what a Reiki master is first, and then share with us um, uh, what brought you to that, and some of your experiences being a Reiki master, and are you still practicing these modalities today?
Yeah, every day, just leveraging on myself and the environment and around.
Mhm.
I think the best way, because there's different practices that to me are very similar. So Qigong is the Chinese version of what you may say is the Yushui Japanese Reiki, right? Energy practice. And for people to kind of get a visual hook as to what does that mean, think of Jedi, right? We all can at least acknowledge that there's life force in this world. That's also known as Qi and Qi, Qi for Chinese Qigong, and Ki, Ki for Reiki. And so that's life force. The Japanese interpretation in English is life force. So the ability to work with life force in a benevolent way that can help from a vibrational standpoint. And everybody has this ability. And it doesn't mean that you have to follow a Reiki practice or a Qigong or a Tai Chi, but those are all variations of the same thing, of working with a life
Mhm.
force, certain yogic practices, not all of them, but certain yoga practices as well, for activating and moving the flow around you, right? And literally energy manipulation can be done benevolently and malevolently. And what I got into it for was a profound experience. I was gifted this by a really good friend of mine, best friends with her husband, and they're getting married, and she was a massage therapist. And I was just dealing with something at that point in time in my life. She goes, I've got this friend of mine, Maya. She just came into my practice. She does something called Reiki. I think this is 2002, John. And I'm like, never heard of it. She goes, I'll gift it to you. It's completely free. And this is my awakening moment. I think everybody who's listening to this broadcast or hearing this after the film has had an awakening moment in their life where there are things that you might say are supernatural that you just cannot dismiss because you have witnessed it and you have experienced it. Not only witnessed it like some lights in the sky, but you've experienced events where you just can't shake it off. And for me, it was a very positive shake off, thing I couldn't shake off. So this girl says, just lay on this bed. I'm like, okay, clothes on, get comfortable, lay on your back, turns down the lights, puts on some, nice kind of spa type music for watering. She goes, and just relax. She goes, 30 minutes. Next thing I know, I'm feeling it. So I've got my eyes closed and I kind of starting to feel like transcendent. You're kind of floating. You're feeling really good. She's not touching me, but I believe she is standing right beside me. I can feel warmth emanating off the body. When you have somebody extremely close to you, you can feel the body heat onto you, right? When you're tapped into it. And then I, feel her hands around the chest and it gets nice warmer and activated and just really relaxed around my heart space and around my lungs. And then I also feel calmness across my head and the back of the head and the forehead. My mind chatter completely vaporizes, just goes right into nice stillness. And the next thing I know, as I feel her hands, they're just pulsing, warm, very nice, warm over my stomach. And I just feel a gentle kind of clockwise turn, almost of energy, right? As if she's doing this over my stomach with her hands. And the next thing I hear, but I don't hear it above me, I hear from way back behind me, is I hear her saying, I see you. I see you wearing a gray jacket with a dark navy stripe on the shoulders, with a little red stripe below it, and you're holding a baseball glove and you're throwing a yellow tennis ball in the air, and there's a circle of trees around you. It's kind of muddy, but it's dry. And you're looking up at the sky, throwing this tennis ball into the sky. And I'm thinking to myself, holy frick, that's me at the age of 6 on our property at 6 Mile Lake, Ontario. And that's me. That's what I did. That was the jacket I had. The other thing that was wild is when she finished the whole session, she said, you can open your eyes, but just look around the room and take it in. She was standing at the back of the room doing all this. She was not above me. She was not on me. She was never beside me. She was standing at the back of the room, and I felt all this energy. And I came away with some nice personal messages that she shared with me about this time that really helped calm me for this period that I was going through in my life in that time in 2002. I went, so she's got some psychic abilities, but the ability to channel energy from the other side of a room and make you feel great and make you feel whole. And I didn't know the terms then, but to make you grounded and bring you back into yourself. And that piqued my curiosity. And I started with her, and then she gave me other modalities and people to go learn from. And I did that. And I've been on that path for a quarter of a century now, 25 years, just about.
Wow, what a journey and what an experience that is. I've heard of Reiki masters, over the years. I had gotten I did Tai Chi meditation in Manhattan in my early 20s, um, and some other things. I even floated in tranquility tanks, as they were called at the time.
Nice.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, but what's fascinating about you, what you just described, is working with vibration and energy and how powerful that can be. Um, let's move forward now into what the war we're engaged in now and what you're doing serving in that war. You've got over 700 podcasts under your belt to date. When did you launch your popular podcast, and what are the range of topics that you discuss with your guests, present day?
Yeah, it was quite amazing. As a tie off to that, as Tesla says, to understand the universe, think of the numbers 369 and energy, frequency, and sound, harmonics, right? Which you look at 369, you look at what he said, things are actually a trinity, which are all also the same. A frequency and a vibration is a sound. A sound is a frequency. It also is a vibration. So it's really interesting when we talk about on the global war defense shows
Mhm.
about fifth generation 5G warfare and 6G, right? Nobody now says we're talking about the 5 or 6G towers, do they? Right? The spiritual, the physical, the mental, the emotional, etc., and all of those, because we have a quantum entanglement with each other and the collective consciousness that they've attempted to, and they have, like 9/11 and other places, they have stolen the collective consciousness of mankind and they have redirected it so that we unknowingly are co-creating the world that the bad guys, I'll just put it at that sense, want to have us live in this cage, right? Calling us the free range, useless eater chickens of the world. But the chicken doesn't really realize the 3 square feet each side in the cage, they're not really free, right? They're just given the notion and the thought that they are as they're running around. So anyways, that was really powerful for me. And then to your point right now, John, when did I launch the show? Was that the question?
Mhm. Yeah, when did you launch the podcast, and what type of subjects do you comb through for those that may be interested
That,
in following you who aren't following you?
thank you. Freedom Convoy was the catalyst. Watching and the very moment that the RCMP horses ran over the clan mother and the other man who died from those injuries, so murdered them and ran them over, I put my fist through a wall. And it was not even a conscious thing because I screamed. It was live streaming Freedom Convoy. And in that moment, you have to figure out what can you do. And at that moment, that was the moment that we're not going back. Like at that moment, it was very clear to at least me, and I'm certain it was the entire world, that if they're going to do that, this isn't just cop forces being badasses and just standing there and, Canadians who are screaming for freedom and this is enough. Because that clan mother had a roses in her hand and she is still on the mic and saying, I'm standing for peace, love, joy, and unity. Will you join me? And she was offering a rose to another one of those RCMP or Ottawa police, whoever it was in the riot gear. She was offering that rose. And a second and a half later, the horses came charging and they stampeded the crowd, her being one of it, and murdered the man. And so that's when I went, okay, there's no going back from this. How do you move forward? And how can I play a very small part in helping uplift the world? Now, my mission, what we hadn't covered off yet in 2015, I did what's called a QHHT session. Now, those came to fame because Dolores Cannon created the quantum healing hypnotherapy technique. And back in certain gifts were given to me when my then wife said, I no longer want to do this. She took her ring off in the therapist, gave it to the therapist, and walked out the door, had me crashed, crying like a blubbering baby on the floor. Had never blubbered like that in my life because that was my life destroyed as far as I'm concerned. This is the woman I was going to have kids with, come hell or high water. I'm going to make this marriage work, do whatever is needed. But people have a choice in coming together, right? And you have to choose. And so all of a sudden, 2 days later, the book called Journey of Souls was on a coffee table at a new friend's house, and she had it there. And I said, "What is that?" And I read the back cover from Dr. Michael C. Newton, and I said, could I borrow this? I finished it that night, got the next book, the next morning, and then I booked a session. And how does this correspond with the Sovereign Soul Show and what we do now? In that QHHT session, then I went to an LBL, I met my spirit council. And again, so here I am going, divorce, death, could be several years. I'm not going to do these surgeries because they require Oxycontin, and I can't get proven. I can't receive insurance payments for the surgeries unless I'm on Oxycontin. So I'm saying no to that, but I don't know what else to do. And I met my spirit council, and I said, what is my purpose in this lifetime? I'm literally thinking like, what the fuck is all this here for? And they said, your goal that you signed is to uplift the consciousness of humanity through song and story. Now, take this into account. I already mentioned, John, we went deep on how did I get to the scripts and the writing. Well, after I had that and met the Spirit Council and came back with that core message, I changed on my personal Facebook page and Instagram later, my soul's purpose, SOUL, is to uplift the consciousness of humanity through song and story. That is core. That is written in my DNA as far as I'm concerned. And then months later, Aaron Sorkin, masterclass, years and years later, all this with the script. And now I see the clan mother and everything happening at the Freedom Convoy. And I didn't know, never wanted to have a podcast, never interested in radio show, broadcasting, or anything to that sort. But there's something you just need to do to speak out. And how do you do that peacefully and truthfully to continue to save people? Because at that point in time, nearly all had been murdered, killed, or left, because I was one of those guys saying, don't wear a mask, don't get the jab, it's going to kill you, here's all the research. And I was outcast. I had everybody block me, everybody, except one family member, but they just didn't want me to contact them. And so that's where I started with purpose and figured out, if I'm going to do a show, it's got to be of interest to me, it's got to be in line with that soul's purpose and mission in the world, and it's got to help save people, enlighten people, and be very conversational. And it has to be spiritual first. And that's where the Sovereign Soul Show was born. That's where the mascot, the Bling Buddha, as everybody's seen on the coffee cup, right? If you see the Bling Buddha, right, here we are. That's our mascot. That's where he came about. And everything that I hold near and dear, the dove of peace on his shoulder, the lotus flower of life, gold chain with the big silver medallion, which has been an XRP token. So here we are, 4 years. And now just recently, nobody has read that bio for a while. I appreciate it because I reminded, I'm now approaching 900 shows. And it's such an honor to have many people in the audience. And I read every comment. Sometimes it might be a week and a half or 2 weeks will go by, but I read every single comment. Rumble, now on YouTube, got one of the YouTube channels back, so back on YouTube. So I still go through that, and we do our best to at least let everybody know they're acknowledged when they put a comment on there. And it's incredible to be part of this small part of this great awakening of mankind.
Well, it's fantastic. You've answered to the higher calling with 900 episodes under your belt. And so let's have you weigh in on some of the events at the time of the recording of this is March 4th. The events that just commenced in Iran will be yet, in my opinion, another opportunity, and we see it unfolding. Folks like you and I and many of our followers would have forecast this as well, that the mainstream media, the left, the Democrats, and shall we say some less grounded or less well-informed individuals in the MAGA movement collectively, with the move made in Iran, you're going to hear Trump, and we are hearing it, warmonger, dictator, unconstitutional, so forth and so on. What are your views from any angle you'd like to approach on the conflict or the mission, the operation that is unfolding right now in Iran?
Well, at some point in time, that it's going to go overt and it's going to go kinetic. Like all those great friends of ours, Lieutenant Colonel Carl Bosey, Colonel Chuck Sellers, Michael Jaco, others have stated, Colonel Lennox. It's going to be kinetic. So we're finally seeing them taking down the deep state, right? Everybody has been shouting, and we're all part of this, and this is great. Tribunals. We want to see the pedophiles get their military tribunals, the ones that have been doing the worst of the kids. We want to see them get their military tribunals just from knowing, not that people are bloodthirsty. I want to see people hang.
Right.
There might be a small subset of that, but looking at the generations for the children and our children's children, we want to know that that stands alone as the final stopgap to anybody who might even think about that dis-ease, sickness, Satanist, demonic aspects. They'll know what's in store for them. And so that's why I believe we need to see I estimate 100 million or more, from the crimes against humanity, the jabs, the processed foods, everything, right? And some of those people will get life, others will get the death penalty, which they deserve. Yet this, you cannot turn a street. Vancouver, British Columbia, which just had 2 million this weekend, John, 2 million homeowners around Vancouver, British Columbia were informed that they're going to be evicted because little did they know, even though we did a show on it and a few other people did in November 2022, on October 22 of 2022, that October 22nd, Vancouver City Council was the final municipality to sign UNDRIP, which sold all of the province of British Columbia, turned it over to the United Nations. All of it. The air, the land, the mineral rights, all of it to the United Nations. So they just got informed 2 million residential and commercial business owners that own land that they're going to be evicted, and it's all going to the Musqueam Nation, First Nation. All of it. That's it.
Wow.
We own it. Leave. Get out. And while that happened this weekend, there were tens of thousands of people in Vancouver, in the city, chanting, Trump, 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 holding Iranian, Israeli, and waving American flags. So I give that phenomenal juxtaposition, this contrast of this is happening, yet those people are still in the streets with Israeli, American, and Iranian flags, screaming Trump's name for joy, for liberty, for freedom, calling on God bless Trump, thank you, Trump, as an example for anybody you might hear coming out of those little, retard media outlets.
Yes.
They're silenced. This is necessary to take out the nest of the vipers and all of the off-world technology on, around, and below that final establishment of the deep state within our ring of this planet. It's amazing.
Well said. Let me ask you this question. With July 4th rapidly approaching, we all know the massive significance of that date is not just another 250, not just our 250th birthday or another firecracker moment. It's a big deal on many, many levels. With July 4th rapidly approaching, where we're anticipating statements from Juan O'Savin, will be dancing in the street to President Trump. It'll be the biggest celebration in history. We'll have nation leaders here and so forth and so on. I think it is going to be spectacular. If we're celebrating to that extent come July 4th, with it rapidly approaching, how could you best define what you think, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that's going to undoubtedly take place? We have the mess, the Iran cleanup and what that's all about. There will be other things between now and July. How would you best define what you think these next 4 months might look like?
First of all, I'd say if Juan's going to say we're dancing in the street, he and Jen, I hope they can send the plane pick me up, because I want to join all of you guys in Washington for that. That would be amazing. So that would be awesome. Awesome. What an incredible man and lovely wife and patriots they are.
Yeah.
Secondly, folks, incredible. I say keep a high level outlook on all of this, right? Like, you just know. And Hegseth mentioned it 2 days ago. He's like, hey, there's Iranian sleeper cells here in America. They've been activated and are going to be activated. We are ready for them. We are ready is also the acronym for war. We are ready. We know it, right? We have the Golden Dome. We have incredible AI computers, right? Not to say drop your guard. I mean, stay vigilant, but keep your chin up, your head held high, your chest pumped up with celebration as to what has been happening and what is to come for that American 250th anniversary. And I'm pretty certain that Trump said that this will be a celebration as well for the planet. Now, Derek, with his photograph, could tell us, right to the day and the time, the date stamp that he said all that. And
Yes.
another thing, back to Derek, because we've been doing every Wednesday or so, we would do a Where We Go When We Go All weekly show for years, right? And from the time that we were together on Truth Tour, and Juan sent the planes over us. He sent the F-16s. Juan, that's how Juan and I got to know each other. He interrupted my speech with an F-16 tailpipe out the window at Truth Tour in Cheyenne.
Wow.
So I still got to thank him for
Yeah.
that. And then eight F-16s every roughly 36 seconds, 100 feet off the deck, led to C-130s and those Blackhawks, which is a nice throwback and a callback to the fact, people, that years ago, Derek and I were standing there together, and National Command Authority, or whomever was the actual commander in chief of the American Armed Forces, removed the hard deck in a residential area and allowed military jets, fighter jets, F-16, F stands for fighter, and then C-130s, C for cargo, transports, and then Blackhawks to buzz us at 100 to 150 feet for hours and hours on end. So once again, that's a reminder that this is still an operation that has been going on for a long time. And Trump is the finisher in bringing about the board of peace. So then what Derek has also said too about American 250, and kept putting it out there every now and then for people, John, as a reminder to the audience, is that there has also been an operation underway for years getting the states, each state, ready for its own 250th anniversary fair that starts July 4, 2026 and runs until July 4, 2027. And that has not stopped. And just like we've seen Biden hadn't revoked or rescinded any of Trump's executive orders, this has never been revoked nor rescinded whatsoever too. And I truly hope that Venezuela, if not Alberta, or at least this guy, will be able to participate in that on the USA border side and reunite with my family. But if it doesn't happen, then I guess it was not meant to happen yet for me.
Understood. Very briefly, Brad, because I know it's a passionate issue and there's a lot to unpack in there, but I want to get to a couple more questions. This show's just reached about the hour mark, but briefly define to our audience, if you care to, what your dilemma is as to your inability to hang your hat here in your home, United States of America. Do you care to share that plight briefly and where it's at presently, so we can get the energy from all the millions of people that may be looking at this down the line to feed towards the ultimate goal that should bring justice to you? Share that briefly, if you will.
That would be excellent, John. And no problem, because I've shared this on shows before. People know it. Jaco, McKay, other people, SG and on, had me on saying Brad's the man with no country, right? Because they froze the bank accounts, and stopped that. That's in Venezuela. And then also in the States, it was required to wear a mask and show a vaccine passport for travel. And I said no to all of that. And then we had a 100% Nazi border supervisor of a border patrol U.S. side with his wife. And I cited international law and all these things and whatnot. And again, I legally and I've lawfully lived in USA Inc. as well, with visas, etc. As you all know, you've seen the paperwork, John. And thank you for what you've done for that too. But they went, well, no USA Inc. for you. You refuse to wear a mask. You refuse this. And that supervisor said, and I guarantee this is all recorded as they have it there. He said, "You're not American. You have no rights," when I was citing international law and treaty. And by virtue of that, what we've all learned, they have the unfettered discretion to bar and ban anyone they see fit and choose to do. And that's what they did. They barred me from returning to the USA Inc. with my family and loved ones who happen to have voted for Trump. And at least some of them have confirmed that and never taken the you-know-what in the arm and stood up, and were also persecuted and lost their jobs just over the masks and the exemptions too. So hopefully that will go by the wayside and I'll be able to return. That's a simple remedy I'm looking for. And for a guy who's been at 9/11, who not has been privy to all of that, as you mentioned in the intro, has been at the Pentagon and 18 stories below it. Like there are things, people, that are still coming that you haven't seen, that's coming from disclosure, that will be incredible, rock your socks off in a very good and a very positive way as we return to a type 1 spacefaring civilization. This isn't a new thing, but we're returning to it for people who are just becoming aware of it. And you're literally going to be looking at and holding, I believe, in your heart space, a place that it's benevolent like Star Trek, and it doesn't go Terminator, with the Optimus robots that Elon has, or that, one in Germany. Those guys are crazy what they've got, those jumping robots. Anyways, so I'll leave it to you, John. And thank you so much for having me here. I hope all this was a benefit to the audience, though.
Oh, this is wonderful. And we've got a couple more subjects I'd like you to weigh in on. Talk with me about
Okay.
what you believe. I caught a few clips, whether they were sizzle reels or just scanning through some of your broadcasts on your platform as of in the last month or so. It seems you know quite a bit about what's going on in the central bank debacle as it relates to silver and gold. So talk with me about what you believe is taking place concerning the global financial reset, as we call it, with a focus on gold and silver. What is happening at the central bank, and what are your forecasts of where gold and silver will be in the near to midterm future? And most importantly, why?
Sure. And everything I state, by the way, is all based on fact. So your audience should know that. First of all, you're looking at $15,000 to $20,000 gold by December as a very real possibility. I mean, what we're now up to, it was 14,000 on Sunday. It's now over 15,000 contracts last checking today. In the futures market, trading, betting on $15,000 to $20,000 gold. So what does that mean to people? When you're sitting in futures and you're sitting on paper and you're placing bets, you've got millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars that are betting that gold itself will go to 15 to 20,000 ounce in December. But Kiyosaki even called it like months ago. He said it needs to be $27,000 an ounce gold. And when you sit that, and I ran the math because I heard this, and JP Morgan issued their report last week that they're speculating alone gold's going to be 9,300 an ounce this year. That's JP Morgan Chase, right? Mm-hmm. Here are the guys that are protecting the pedophiles, who are funding the pedophiles, who are laundering money for the cartels that are foreign terrorist organizations, telling you conservatively that 100 an ounce gold. And it's funny how all of a sudden I say certain keywords and my screen starts flickering. So I'll need to, I guess, retract it back because it's a Google Chrome browser. Maybe there's some woke stuff going on there. So I feel that that's going to be very important from the signaling, rather than watching US debt clock and what it's signaling, because we know it's got to go back there. Now, when you look at constitutional money in the coinage act of 1792, Philadelphia Mint, they established by constitutional law, and George Washington was the one who signed off on this, everybody, be 15 to 1, right? 15 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold. And you sit there in 1913, they brought in the 1913, the ADL, the IRS, and what was that other little thing? The Federal Reserve Board, where they print money. Nayib Bukele completely red-pilled and awoke CPAC 2 years ago in February, saying, what is the Federal Reserve? What is a treasury bond? The Federal Reserve is a printing machine. They print paper. The bond says this is what we'll give back to you, and they print more paper. It comes back, and they tell you that you need to pay taxes, which are also 100%, whether you've read the 16th Amendment or not, and it's never been ratified, but you've also read the actual law in Washington, D.C., that federal income tax only applies, this is the IRS itself, subsection 501.C-3, I believe. I haven't had to quote this since 2023, John. So forgive me, it's subsection or subsection 501. It's on my show somewhere. People can pull it up real quick. But only if you're a federal agent, an employee of the federal government, or you are living in the District of Columbia, are you required by that law to file income taxes. So now what we've seen with to abolish the IRS coming in from Scavino just a number of days ago, with Trump stating in the State of the Union speech that we're bringing in so much money, I don't believe we're going to need to have personal income taxes anymore. And we've also seen the measures and the mechanisms in place to get rid of property taxes, whether you're looking at Florida, what DeSantis has done there in removing property taxes, Elon being on that for months and months on end about property taxes. Why do you pay rent on a property that you already own? You shouldn't have to do that again. And the consumption tax being brought in, just like the great Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi, as I've always recognized the commander in chief of Australia, but I'm self-identifying that for him for years, talking about a consumption tax. So now we just go back to a national sales tax or a consumption tax at 2%. You've got the tariffs, which is the economy and the business of a republic of America, and people prosper. And if people are wondering, how is that going to happen? How can gold and how can silver get to $5,000 an ounce? Gold get to $20,000 an ounce, or silver get to $1,188 an ounce? And we'll just do the math. If that's $11.88 an ounce for silver, what does gold need to be at a 15-to-1 metallic rate based on the Constitution? And that's exactly what Trump is stating. Everything is going back to Constitution, constitutional law, common law. We've seen the judge advocate generals, which have been retrained out of the bar into common law. This is incredible and historic for a time where we're returning to sovereignty in God in America. And it is also putting its flag in the sand, metaphorically speaking, as well, for all nations that it does business with, and saying you need to adopt these types of practices, which for me, on a whole, are more or less what was written in those tablets chiseled on a hill a couple thousand years ago.
Thank you. Wow. You unpacked a lot there. I'd like to provide a little feedback on that. You're right about President Trump. I'm paraphrasing him. First off, at the State of the Union, he opened up the State of the Union mentioning the Golden Age. That's how he opened it. And he bookended it, closed it with the Golden Age again. And prior to closing it at the end, kind of repeating what you said in my own words, he said something like, and I'm not quoting the president, I don't have it in front of me, but I'm paraphrasing. Anyone who watched it would know what I'm talking about. He basically said, which you just touched on, he said, look, he's been alluding to no income tax for quite some time in pressers, in cabinet meetings, in memes, in public posts, and so forth. And as you stated, Dan Scavino's put a lot of content out. In fact, the day after, I recall, the State of the Union, Scavino published, abolish the IRS now. So we know it's being dismantled, as is the Federal Reserve. And you're absolutely right, unconstitutional, not ratified, and illegal Ponzi scheme, and that's out there now, and everybody now knows what G. Edward Griffin was telling everybody decades and decades ago. So here we are, but the president said something, this is where the paraphrase is, he said something like, there won't be a need for income tax. The American people have been burdened, financially burdened, and I'm going to help the people I love. That's almost a quote as he closed out of that. People can go back and listen to it. So great things are on the horizon. We don't have time to get into this just now, but I'd love to invite you on the Global Financial Reset Show, but we're live, and I know that time slot doesn't work for you, but perhaps you and I can hop on a Zoom. I can drill down some more reset type questions for you and then inject it into the GFR show. But, we know about the repatriation of wealth. We know about how, thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox, who really unpacked that on a full episode with us, including the birth certificate issue, the person versus the public entity and the tradableness. There's so much going on there. But folks that are listening, help is on the way. Don't listen to me. The president has told you that. He told the world that at the State of the Union while he pistol whipped the right side of that room, including the Supreme Court, who went the wrong way on tariffs. But I don't want to get into all that right now. I do want to get into this, though. As President Trump is now set, listen up to our audience. Don't call us crazy. As President Trump is set now to release the security files that have been there since Eisenhower, that every president has had top secret clearance and access to. We're talking about aliens, UFOs, and things of this sort. Talk with me a little bit about life beyond Earth, or what entities do you think are here on Earth? It's okay to unpack this now, folks, because the president has basically told us he's releasing it now. So in my opinion, it'll be drip, 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 flood, like everything else, just like the Epstein files, just like everything else that's going to be unpacked before the world to see. What's your take on other entities here on Earth and out there up in space, if you will?
First of all, they absolutely exist. I've been witness to it and experienced both of those. Witness on multiple occasions. Even have had shows. And the funny thing, John, when you talk about this, the very first time I was invited onto your show, and we were talking about what we were doing, global defense war, and said, "Can we talk about the UFOs and galactics?" And you actually gave us a caution. You said, well, my audience isn't really ready for that. And that was just a year ago.
Timing.
Right? And
Timing,
yes. The AC is off as
the time is
show, so
I remember that moment, Brad. I remember that moment on the Global Defense War. And while it was introduced, we entertained it for a bit respectfully, and then we backed it down and had a chit chat in the digital green room because it's just my style. I was waiting for the president to pave the way for us because I knew it was coming. Here it is. So you can unload in the next couple of 3 minutes what you care to share, because I know you know a lot about this.
Well, and I appreciate that. And just so the audience knows, this was not a slight against John. This is John taking his oversight in terms of what he feels you all need to hear and know about at this point in time to help you get through the next week or a few months in your life, in your community, in your job, with your peers, with your family, with your children. So it's amazing when you sit there and look at a guy who has done so much of what you have done, John, in the broadcasting world, and where you are with a virtual team and what you've been able to achieve. Like I said in the beginning, ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, there are more viewers of this show in a monthly period of time than there are on all of those networks and other ones like CBC reported and BBC collectively combined from this man. So he definitely has an idea and a pulse of the audience. And when you're saying now that, hey, we should talk about this, he definitely knows it's go time. From this standpoint, in off-world, 100%, you've got it, right? Everybody knows it's a fact, and people are waiting for it too. And whether it's a cultural standpoint of looking at War of the Worlds in the 50s to the iterations of Star Trek to Star Wars and the power of what captivated a culture and the consciousness, the true consciousness of people, is there's an inner knowing, right? Did George Lucas write an incredible script with Return of the Jedi, or that was the first one, I think it was? I think the script was really good because, again, he followed the journey, hero's journey. Everybody knows about the myths, right? And the hero's journey, and laid that out well as Skywalker. Yet it was special effects. Yeah, that was pretty good too. But there's a knowing in your consciousness, and people can feel this within themselves, right between your heart space and your gut. And your gut is known as your power chakra, and your heart space we know is the heart center, and it's been proven once again by frequency, by institutes, by EEGs and ECGs, and also by biology, that we have more neurons in our heart than we do in our head, and we have more neurons as well in our stomach than we do in our head. So between those 2 points, when you get into stillness as an audience member and you want to feel if this resonates with truth, you get into stillness. Maybe you hold on to a crystal, or you go out and you ground for 5 minutes, and then you just ask yourself in your mind, is it true that we have benevolent life on other planets here supporting our evolution now? And feel what the answer is, and you'll feel the light. If it's light, it's right. So if it feels light to you in this space, it's right. Some people are claircognizant, clairvoyant, clairsentient, so they might get it. Other people will hear the frequencies, and very few people are synesthesia, where they can actually see all the sounds of what is true versus not true, right? And then they have a beautiful color spectrum to tell them that. So that's number one. It's 100% here. Number two, in terms of the rollout, I had an opportunity and the pleasure of being invited by General Valley to meet on a call with a man last year, and Major General Paulie Valley. What an incredible national treasure. Him, Thomas, Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney as well. He invited me to this call, and this particular man, and by the way, General Valley does things on the fly, on a whim. This is the man has American government, the number one intelligence gathering organization in America, all private, at Stand Up America US Foundation. Mary Fanning about General Valley. So when General Valley invited me to this call, I said, yes, sir. And the man that we met and spoke with has been a part of what we could call the military industrial complex. He was a project manager, and his degrees are out the wazoo. Like, think Doogie Howser, but in a technical sense, computer science sense. Everybody remembers Doogie Howser back in the day, right? That 12-year-old who became the MD, the Dr. Neil Patrick Harris played. That's this type of guy. It's confirming so much of what I've seen in certain television programs or on some of the movies I mentioned, that's what he's been involved in for 30 years with the American government and helping prepare those technologies now, more of them now, for a rollout for a time when everybody is ready for them. And I feel we are just about at that point in time next year, John.
Yes. Well, thank
This
you.
man
And
was mind-boggling, and
I
some of the
bet.
stuff that we covered was it's exciting. And that's why I'm excited.
Mhm. Excellent. Well, as we wrap up, I've got one or two closing questions. What do you feel? We're living through extraordinary times, obviously. And while a lot of folks are very uncomfortable with what's been going on over this last 10 years, quite frankly, our entire lives, and we're starting to wake up and see it, a lot of folks are having a tough time with this. So, but I would just simply say, we're on God's side. God always wins. We are winning. We're winning madly. My war reports cover that every day on my platform, and so it really is a great time to be alive. And you mentioned earlier about sleeper cells here in light of the Iran issue and other things to come. And as Sheriff Mack has told us, and I've interviewed him many times, I did worked with him back in 2009 as well. But last year, he basically, I've been around the block. He basically said, these sleeper cells are here. They're well positioned and well armed, if you will, and trained. And they're not here to play checkers and chess. That's stuck in my head. I'm a little off point, but I want to bring that up because you cautioned everybody before, as has General Valle, as has Sheriff Mack, Juan O'Savin, many of the people that we've had the privilege and opportunity to talk and work with. So folks, be vigilant and so forth. But it is a great time to be alive. And we're going to learn about, in my opinion, Brad, over the next several years, we're going to get to the bottom of and bring justice to and learn about 9/11, Benghazi, J6. You got a long list of things, okay? A bunch of presidencies going back to Clinton and perhaps earlier that will be null and void for a host of reasons. You can impeach a president even after the term is gone. There's so much that can happen. And so we're looking at a lot of dark and evil things through the Epstein list. Wait till they get to the laptop of Weiner. I've been catching some of the episodes with Bill and Hillary, that their deposition last night, unbelievable. Were caught rats in a trap, and we know where that's heading. Again, drip, 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 boom, flood. And I know a lot of folks say they've already been executed, and perhaps that's the case. If that is the case, we'll be shown. If that's not the case, we'll be shown. And either way, we're going to end up with the exact same result. But I'm off point. I'm rambling here a bit. But I do want to say that some of the disruptive, uncomfortable truths that everybody's going to be facing should ground themselves in faith, surround themselves with like-minded people who understand the times in which we live, and strengthen those circles. And it really is a great time to be alive. And I think people are going to start to breathe, certainly after July 4th and in the next year or two, as life gets better for all of us on this planet. But what do you feel, Brad, is the greatest threat facing humanity today?
Well, first of all, let everybody know about 9/11. Just touching on that as well, John. The only individual whom I've had an opportunity to meet in the last nearly 6 years of what we would call the freedom truth movement, so to speak, is Juan O'Savin, who's the only one who confirmed that what we saw in my job and me, once again, going to the Pentagon, 18 stories below it, because the colleagues and peers that I had there at that point in time the corporate position I was involved in from New York City, then up to there at the Pentagon. He's the one who said, yeah, they fired a cruise missile into it from a blank country sub. I'm not going to say the country at the moment people, because we're talking about something that happened 25 years ago, but from that sub that surfaced in the Potomac and fired it into the Pentagon. We have it at my corporate position. All of the emails that missile. It was a missile that hit the Pentagon. Missile that hit the Pentagon. Why? Because we were RIM BlackBerry, and we were already involved in some of the government contracts. But obviously, everybody remembers at that point in time, the only thing that was able to communicate under the rubble at the World Trade Center towers in Manhattan and elsewhere around the world in high pressure point situations like that, including Washington, D.C., was BlackBerry, because what we now know is they hadn't thought to jam that network. But back then we thought, oh, it was because of the network. Now we know that they were jamming the cell phone networks on purpose for people. So that disclosure to come out, the directed energy weapons used along with the thermite and the actual demolitions of those buildings, just like some of the other things that I've been privy to, my sister as well, we haven't touched on her, but I'm just incredible blessed for what she's been able to do, even though she's still under a 20-year NDA. She taught at the Pentagon, DOD, NSA, DIA, and then she was scooped up at CSIS and spent some years at CSIS. And then based on what she saw and learned out there at her high-level position, left and went and became a Reiki master and making crystal jewelry, completely different than somebody that has a PhD in intelligence analytics, right? And recruited at all those high-level organizations. So I went off a little bit here on that tangent, and
it's an important
roundabout answering your question. Now I'm forgetting the question. I apologize.
It's okay. I'll bring you back to the question, but thanks for sharing all that. It's valuable information and insights. And all these things, some of the things I mentioned and many more will be unpacked. Justice will be served. Justice is being served. And the truth, someone once said, will set us free. And that's exactly the moment we're at right now. The question, Brad, was what do you think is the biggest threat, the greatest threat facing humanity today? Just curious what your viewpoint might be on that.
Ignorance is the greatest threat.
Yeah.
Ignorance.
Okay. Understood. Makes sense.
Time,
let me ask.
Ignorance.
Yeah, and it's been very frustrating for a lot of us trying to pierce that in our fellow brothers and sisters around the world. And we've all done, the president acknowledged us some years back, and it was resurfaced. I found it somewhere recently on a social media. It was a post he did, I think, on the once Twitter or something, and he was thanking us, the digital warriors, the digital soldiers, the podcasters, thanking and acknowledging us for the contributions and work that we have done. And thank goodness, on a positive note, we do have more and more people waking up, more and more people speaking out, and most importantly, more and more people becoming somewhat able to receive the disruptive, uncomfortable truths without instantly challenging it. I'm unaware of the massive ignorance that's still there and the people that won't listen and so forth and so on. But you know what? I don't know if there'll be an EBS or an EAS. If I was in the interview seat, someone asked me, I believe it will happen. That's my opinion. It's just one man's opinion. In fact, I just did a war report on that. I think it's publishing today, or maybe was, or will be tomorrow. I don't recall. But I do believe it's coming. And that will be the ultimate wake-up call, because whether it's 10 days, 3 days, or whatever, if and when those communications all over the world, it's a global event, take place, the people will know and the people will be shown. And only complete lunatics or brain dead people from all the stuff, the MK Ultra, the drugs, the food, the poisons, those people, well, they're not going to receive any information, but the majority of the world is going to get the truth soon, and that's going to really tip the scales. So I want to close out with this, Brad. The golden age, it means a lot. That term means a lot of different things to a lot of people. And I've often asked this question to folks here in Conversations of Consequence, and therefore I'm going to ask you as well. What does the golden age mean to you? And describe what you believe America and the world may look like, say, in 5 years.
First of all, the phrase "the golden age" to me is something that I feel that would be important for everybody to lock in to their heart place, because while the first connotation you get is financial, what that also means is freedom, like absolute freedom. And then when people are looking at freedom, they don't have a level, John, I believe the majority of the world right now, because we haven't been allowed, we haven't been taught to think, because we've been indoctrinated to have the creativity and the dreamer mentality extinguished from schools,
Yep.
society, culture, multi-generational thinking. Work hard, play hard. Remember that adage? The rat
Hmm.
race, work hard, play hard. Well, all that does as well is it keeps you at a high level of stress in every aspect of your life. And it's all done by design. So
Hmm.
5 years from now, I envision an ascended world. In an ascended world where we're all we're all speaking from the same common language. And I'm talking from your heart space first and foremost, from a spiritual space, one that is loving, peaceful, prosperous, and it acknowledges thy fellow man, thy fellow woman. Children are safe because they don't know what it means to not have to worry about not being safe. That's where I feel in 5 years it can be so quickly. And for people who think that that might be a pipe dream, maybe it is. I don't believe it is if we focus on that, because just look at what happened in the last year alone as President Trump delivered in his State of the Union address. Like he stated, we were the worst country in the hemisphere from a security standpoint. You had it in the job, the stock market. Obviously, everything else was going on from the demonic side to where we are now in 12 months. The border issue, you name it. You take any issue and you can look at how much that has exponentially gotten better, not geometrically gotten better, exponentially. So then you take that, you focus that on, we've got nearly everybody arrested, stopped, removed physically as well, maybe unalived, and they're no longer here in 5 years. The ideology, now you're resetting the system for schools, for health, for education, schools and education rather, but education from a spiritual standpoint, a spiritual truth. What is the spiritual truth over religions? That to me is a massive one as well. And that's where
Yes.
I'm speaking about, where we're talking like-minded from the same heart space, because we have a level playing field of truth where every culture, every man, woman, child is accessing it from their fingers, from their phones, and then they're also doing it and living out of a space of creativity in a dreamlike state for what they can do that serves themselves, the highest benefit of themselves and the benefits to others moving forward. And I think that's very possible in just 5 short years. Look where we were 5 years ago to now. That's what I
I
believe, John.
agree. Very well said. And you're right. And put my own words, what you just said basically is right now, ongoing, and certainly over the next 5 years, what will we as a race have experienced? Truth like never before on so many things, including all the false history, the impact of truth injecting into 8 billion people, the tyrannical boots off our necks, the ability for us to exercise our innate talents, gifts, and abilities. Justice being served is a healing mechanism for us all. When you take all of those things, never mind the economic benefits that we briefly touched on a moment ago that's coming our way, you have a transformed world. And that's something we will close this broadcast out with, because that's why we say it's a great time to be alive. There's no accident that we're all here at this time. The question you should ask yourself to the audience is, what were you doing when the global governance was being thrust down the throat of America and the world? What will your answer be? So please can step up, get into the game. It's never too late to reveal truths, confront reality, and make this world a better place. And that's where we're heading. And you're doing great work. You've had an incredible journey, like many people that have accomplished a lot of things, stellar as you have, run into all kinds of challenges and obstacles professionally, physically, personally. And you have certainly risen above all those challenges. And what is the best place? It's been up on the screen, but let's hear it from you. Where is the best place for people to follow you and your work when this broadcast ends?
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Well, I still don't have a website after 4 years, so I've just been focused on pumping it out. But I should probably get one. When you go to Rumble, you can find us on YouTube, but we only just got that channel back. The Sovereign Soul. That's rumble.com/C for channel/The Sovereign Soul. You're going to see the Bling Buddha here. You'll see me in about 37,000 subscribers, depending on the day. That's us. Just like you, John, there's been a lot of rip-offs, pretend you're you. So you'll find different ones and they're reposting it. But right now, as we stand at this broadcast, it's 36,700 followers on Rumble. So you're in around that on Rumble, you've got the right place.
Excellent. Thank you. And to our audience, as we wrap up this Conversations of Consequence, you go to my website, jmcbroadcasting.com. You look in the upper left, I think it's second tab, Contributors. It'll be a page where you'll see Juan O'Savin, Bosi, Brigadier General Blaine Holt, a host of valuable contributors to the broadcast here. You'll see Brad Wozny as you scroll down a bit, his picture, his biography, and a link into his world. So you also have that to learn more about Brad and to click and follow Brad there. So thank you very much for being in the seat at Conversations of Consequence. Fascinating journey. And we look forward to seeing you back on the Global Defense War, of course. And you extended an invitation to interview me or have me chat with you on your platform. I would love that opportunity. And thank you for that invitation. And God bless you. Continue to do the great work you're doing. And folks, I'll be right back after this important announcement about the Global Defense War panel.
Join JMC Broadcasting's monthly Global Defense War Military Panel. JMC hosts an esteemed panel of military experts, including Ricardo Bosi, Tom Lennox, Chuck Sellers, Michael Jaco, Derek Johnson, Brad Wozny, and other military guests. Join us each month, where this panel of esteemed guests analyze the current events across a broad spectrum of topics, addressing the questions and concerns that you have. Subscribe for free by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. John looks forward to seeing you at the next episode of the Global Defense War Military Panel broadcast, right here on jmcbroadcasting.com.
All right. Thank you again to Brad Wozny for sharing some of his personal journey and trials and tribulations and incredible things that he's accomplished. Please follow Brad Wozny beyond this broadcast. Now, here's an announcement as we wrap up in the next 60 seconds. All new Patriot Q&A hour in the private room for premium members, Thursday, March 26th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 1 hour. Derek Johnson on screen. I'll be on screen as your host in our private meeting to answer your questions. No speeches, no interviews, no agendas. The agenda is very simply answer your questions. We premiered this in January with Will Barney. We had our second follow-up with Michael Jaco just last week. And now we're launching this with Derek Johnson. This is a monthly. Learn more about it by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. Click on Premium Portal. You'll get to learn all the benefits there for $9.99 a month. And for those that are not inclined to join us there, you can join our free subscription, which has a lot of good information for you as well. And again, 99% of everything we produce here at JMC Broadcasting is, of course, free to the public. So thank you all for spending this time with me and my guest, Brad Wozny. I'll be back next month with our Conversations of Consequence guest. It's Maria Zach. And I can't wait to bring Maria in here. We spent time in my home at meetings years ago. We interviewed her many years ago. with Italy's role in the election theft and many other things. We invite her to Conversations of Consequence. I think you'll find that interview going to be fascinating too. So stay safe, everyone, and may God be with you.